even have a documentation that a woman was doing it.
Absolutely.
But again, we don't know what that gunpowder is like and how really usable it was.
So how is it done nowadays?
Well, today,
Certainly not the same way.
it has the same components in order to get that reaction,
Yeah.
but it's also coated in graphite so it doesn't absorb water. The gunpowder we have, well, even because we're both range instructors out at the range, and on humid days you get a lot of misfires. Nothing happens because the gunpowder we're using is very hygrostatic. It absorbs moisture out of the air, and when it doesn't burn very well when it's like that. So you get hang fires and misfires when it's like that. It just doesn't work when it's wet.
It's gotta be kind of scary because you have it down in the area and it doesn't fire. Now what do you do?
You freeze.
You empty
You
it
give
out.
it give it a chance to cook off, and then you fire it.
Keep trying it till
we
it
know
works.
what to do to make it fire, so we can make it work. It's generally there's a film that's developed over the frizzen. It could be the there might be gook in the touch hole that leads into the barrel, but we can fix that. Or the flint might not be working right. It might be loose, or it might not have a good edge on it. So we can fix that. But the humidity we can't do anything about. So today's modern gunpowder is actually coated in graphite so it doesn't absorb moisture. That's one of the reasons why it works so much better.
Smokeless powder.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never, ever smokeless powder.
And it says it right on the barrel.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The pressures, it won't be allowed.
And just been something like being in battle and you think, well, okay, I'm ready to fire and nothing happens. It's like,
Thank you.
Well, you know what to do to fix it.
you know what to do.
It's moving on the stone. You can look at it. I don't see any grit in it. It seems uniform and clear. It's nice and reflective. That fat is moving pretty well. That's done. So that's the way we will get it to. But that's kind of up to the chocolate manufacturer to decide that.
So is chocolate only a drink, or?
Primarily, it was a beverage, yeah. There are probably 15, maybe 20 recipes for cooking with it. You can coat almonds with chocolate and sugar and go track the can. It's not going to be like an M&M. It's going to be a much rougher, coarser kind of a coating. You can make it into ice cream. You can make it into what we think of as a mousse or pudding today. You can make it thicker and bake it in a crust as a chocolate pie, put a meringue on the top of it. Those are all recipes we have for chocolate and 18th century loaves. There's a recipe called a Spanish loaf where you take a bread roll, you soak it in wine, you fry it in lard, you roll it in sugar, fill it up with chocolate. So those kind of things we're doing with it. But primarily, it is thought of as a drink. It's a beverage. It's the hot liquor, tea, coffee, and chocolate, or the hot liquors that you drink.
Do you make the chocolate for the chocolate, for the...
No way, man.
Okay.
Doing it this way, the first tour group wouldn't even get a cup. Wouldn't get a cup of chocolate. No, sir. The chocolate that you get when you go through the coffee house is manufactured for us by the Mars Corporation. It's a product they call American Heritage Chocolate. We worked with them to create this based on 18th century recipes, and they modified their manufacturing process so that it doesn't have the soy lecithin and the 3 days of conching and all the other things that go into modern chocolates. And so it is, I think, pretty authentic in terms of the flavors that you find in it, with the exception of the artificial brandy flavor they add in there. But other than that, it's pretty authentic in terms of the flavors and the processes and how they made it.
How much bean did she start with?
I didn't count them. About a pound and a half. You don't count by the bean. You can't do anything by the bean. It's done by the bean. So we started with about we really started with 4 handfuls of beans, okay? And then we started roasting and grinding them. I think it was pretty close to a pound, maybe a pound and a half at the most. And we'll end up with a little less than that in chocolate, because we'll lose some in shell when we're getting the shells off them. We'll lose some that's dripping on the table right now, and that sort of thing. So we won't get a complete return. Now, I could add sugar to it and bring that volume back up a little bit if I wanted to as well, but even so, you're not going to produce much this way.
But you did all this today, or did you roast
All
it
done
yesterday?
today. No, we started this morning with roasting the beans, shelling them, and then for the last hour and a half or so.
15 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, roasting isn't too long a process. You're not going through a whole lot to do it, but you're roasting to a taste, not to a temperature and time kind of a component that we do today.
So do you taste it?
Yeah, you gotta taste the beans as you're roasting.
Okay.
That's the only way to know if you're
Bill number 82, he seems to truly believe that the nature of man is so good and so pure and so generous that if left to his own devices, he will freely and happily give. I suppose that there will also no longer be any poor nor needy amongst us. Or what? Should their care fall to the responsibility of government? I remind the honorable gentlemen that you have been free for the last 8 years to contribute monies to ministers of the gospel as well as to the poor and the needy. And yet, over these last 8 years, you have not done so. Mr. Jefferson appears to ignore history in this particular instance by thinking that the nature of man is generally good, because all experience shows that men are given to sin. That if left to our own devices, our appetites will always outweigh our reason. Men, by necessity, and all experience shows this, must be controlled by either a power within them or a power without of them, either by the word of God or by the strong arm of man, either by the Bible or the bayonet. That is the choice that is presently before you. I'd like to point out one of our other articles of our Declaration of Rights that should be aired at this present time, I believe, Article number 15, which reads thus: that no free government or the blessing of liberty can be preserved to any people, but by a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, frugality, and virtue, and by frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. Where do we learn these principles, friends? Do we learn these principles from government? Frugality, for example? Certainly not. We learn these principles and furthermore have them frequently reinforced by ministers of the gospel, who must have some means of providing for themselves and their families. The reason that we have seen an 80% reduction of all of our teachers of the gospel is because they've had to take on other forms of labor in order to provide for themselves. They must eat. They cannot rely upon the generosity of the citizenry, because the citizenry have already shown that they will not give.
So force them, Henry. Force them. Give me monies now. in order to support one particular religious opinion. Hand it to me now, and I will turn it over to government, and there we will learn about frugality.
You are the one, sir, who is twisting.
Then we will know about frugality in order to support one particular element of virtue and morality over all others. Would you desire the standard of virtue and morality to be set by government and you will support thereby? Will you have it? Did you notice Henry's adroit twisting of the philosophy? Did you notice that? Did you notice how he was wont to say that the churches are vacant and bare, but they have not been filled over the last 8 years, when initially, when he began his exposition, he told us the reason why. Why? Or were you listening? We were at war, citizens. We were at war. Very clever, Henry, but I didn't forget it. We were at war. And then he proceeds to comment distinctly, for those who want to hear it accordingly, that the essential nature of man is deceitful and corrupt, dishonest. Well, if anyone cares to read Thomas Lobb's Leviathan, you would think so, would you not? That the essential nature of man is deceitful and corrupt, and therefore strong and central governments need to be formed in order to control and to direct. Well, that is liberty or freedom, is it not? Of course not. Read Locke. Read, citizens. Take a moment, read, think. For Locke considers the essential nature of man to be beneficent and good, to encourage doing unto others. And it is an element, I will not deny, of selfishness, of course. Because when we do something good for another, how does it? Indeed, it is the element of human nature to want to feel good and to help someone else. And here's that opportunity with a bill that protects, defends, and supports it, the bill for religious freedom. Henry, those churches will be filled now that the people know with our victory that they are free to hold their religion as they choose and to follow the minister of their own choice.
Once again, the gentleman is twistifying my assessment bill. My assessment bill is not going to impose any one religious opinion upon anybody. As it very clearly states, you will have the complete freedom and choice to contribute those monies to wherever you wish them to go. I find Mr. Jefferson's abhorrence of a tax risible, because this is the man who, after all, has introduced another bill, number 79, yes, calling for the erection and maintenance of public schools of learning throughout the whole of the country, at outrageous expense. Trust me upon this, my friends. One way or another, you are going to pay a tax to support our new republic. It's either going to be to support ministers of the gospel so that we will be a moral and virtuous people, or it will be a tax so that you can put a sheriff or an under-sheriff at every street corner and crossroads.
Be cautious, citizens. Or who does Henry's tax favor? He said it favors all religions. Does it really? Who will hold power and prominence? Who will be the administrators of Henry's tax? The Protestant Christian. Do you hear that, Catholics? You hear that, all others who have come here freely to worship as you choose? There ought not be any fear. We've not been created in blindfolded fear, have we? We've been created in faith, and is not faith simply believing? Faith is not faith without believing. Here's the opportunity. Be cautious, citizens. Be cautious lest you fall to fear. Hand me fear, sir. Hand it to me. Give it to me. You cannot, because it is a conjuration of the human mind when not properly enlightened. And Henry disavows a system of education that will cost or support citizens. It's number 79 before 82, so that we might be the better educated to understand the value of 82. And rest you assured, the money that we will spend for education will never be more than the 1,000th part of what we will spend under future monarchs, princes, priests, and noblemen who will rise up amongst us if we leave ourselves in ignorance.
Once again, Mr. Jefferson is endeavoring to deceive you by suggesting that there is a great multiplicity of religions throughout our country. There is not. With the exception of one Jew in all of Virginia, everyone else is Christian.
I beg your pardon, Henry, there are 2 Hebrews in Norfolk.
Taking the gentleman at his word, there are 3 Jews now in all of Virginia. There might be perhaps 24 Roman Catholics, but they too are considered, at least by me, a legitimate Christian denomination. Everyone else is Protestant in Virginia. We have no Greeks. We have no Turks. We have no Mohammedans. We have no Zoroastrians. We have no Hindus. We are a Christian nation. And frankly, it is my hope that we will so remain.
I have no abhorrence to it, Henry, you know that. But as a Christian nation solely, that is not freedom for religion. We are all created in the image of whom? Common sense, is it not? Each and every one. He knows no color. He knows no gender.
I wonder, sir, if you might be willing to receive questions from our hearers.
I would welcome it, Colonel. Yes, very much so. The Roman said, Vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is ever the voice of God. Therein nature speaks. I welcome their opinion.
Very well. Should any of you have any particular questions of Mr. Jefferson or myself upon our two bills, or any other topic for that matter, may I respectfully propose, for purposes of order, that you first raise up your hands and be recognized. Please, I pray you. The question is, what is the amount of the tax which I am proposing? That is going to vary from year to year as well as from county to county, depending on the needs of those particular religious denominations within that general vicinage. As we have always done, and remember that, Mr. Jefferson's scheme is very radical. As we have always done, every year, the local parish rector and the vestry would gather together to determine if they needed any monies for improvements made to the parish church. Or they would also gather together and say, well, the Jones family just had a terrible fire, or he broke both of his legs. He's unable to provide for his family at this time of need. We have to provide for them some food and some fuel to get them through the winter until he is able to provide for his family once again. So this happens each year. And then those monies are calculated. The sheriff, of course, is the tax collector in each of our several counties. And heretofore, all of those monies have gone to the vestry for distribution to the various needs of that particular parish. My assessment bill will have it so that the sheriff is still going to collect your annual assessment. However, you are going to determine where it is to go. And furthermore, our taxes heretofore have been paid based upon the number of tithables within your household. That is, all males above the age of 16, all non-free females above the age of 16. Thus, it's a very equitable taxation system in that those who have the greatest means for wealth pay the greatest share of taxes. They own 200 slaves, for example. They're paying 200 times the amount that common dirt farmer will pay. So it's annually determined by the local rector.
All of this is a moot point with respect to my bill.
It's not a moot point when you're not going to have any means of encouraging religion.
Oh, look at that faith and trust in one's fellow man. Yes, sir.
Mr. Jefferson, in your closing remarks you mentioned about the equality of mankind, the Declaration of Independence. Do you currently own any slaves?
Sir.
How do you handle religious freedom today?
Sir, it is well known that I continue to harbor my people, or as I have come to refer to them, my family, which has provoked many, I can assure you. And how could you sit there and point the finger at me when you realize our entire nation continues as well? Not a soul can accuse me of being quiet upon this subject. You asked me, however, whether I allow them the opportunity to worship as they choose, and I always have. Yes. I encourage them to read the Holy Writ as they choose. I encourage them to read not only the King James Version, but the Catholic Bibles. Who would deny there's a difference between the two, is there not? Some books in one, not in the other. We know there are books of bearing witness to the teachings of Jesus that are in neither. So does this not immediately provoke the scrutinizing of an individual to wonder just exactly what did Jesus say?
As for me, all of my slaves have been given Bibles. It is my hope that whereas they're destined to a life of bondage on this earth by reading the scripture as I do every day, that they will be assured of a happy hereafter. From the gentleman, please, sir.
The gentleman is want to say firstly that he understands the bill for religious freedom. Thank you, sir. It makes sense, does it not? But of course, government plays no part in a bill for religious freedom. But then you wonder, you question me, why should I be so much in support of a system of education that is administered and presided over by the government, sir? Very simply, because it enlightens us. It cultivates the liberty of what? The human mind. It is not an indoctrination, sir. It is a provoking of open and free thought, open and free questioning. Should we worry about that? Our minds have been created free, and we ought to be so bold to question everything, even the existence of our Creator, sir. He wouldn't want it any other way. But, sir, different from my bill for religious freedom, for it bears no alliance to government, my bill 79 for the universal distribution of education is presided over by whom as the directors, the board of directors in any community, any county, any state. Who is it presided over? No, who's it presided over? Read it.
Eventually, government.
It is presided over by the people, with the government to protect the free election of those citizens to elect those to boards of educators. So the people will continue in connection with their educators, sir. No, the government is not the control, sir. The government, you are forgetting something essential about government, sir. Government protects everyone. Government protects. Yes, I agree with Henry on that, but not in any strong and central government, because that government governs best, which governs least.
Bill 79 will never see the light of day. If you do examine the specifics that are called for in these schools, we're not speaking only of small frame, simple structures throughout Virginia. We are speaking of at least 30, perhaps as many as 61 governor's mansions erected throughout the whole of Virginia. The expense is so vast that ultimately government will control those monies. And then my question and my worry would be, are we speaking truly of education, or might we be speaking of indoctrination? I don't want my boys educated by government.
Either believe it and support it, or use your own mind and think. Enlighten the people generally. Just generally, so that a child in Virginia may converse with a child in Massachusetts, that the two of them may converse with children in the Carolinas, Georgia, eventually to the West, so that all Americans, no matter where they live, can speak openly with one and the other. Enlighten the people generally, and superstitions of body and mind will take flight like evil spirits at the dawn of day.
I wonder, sir, if you would be willing to submit to a division amongst our hearers as to which of our two bills they would prefer to see enacted.
A primary vote before it goes to the legislature?
Aye.
Just out of curiosity. It's not corrupted.
Of course not. I will be very pleased to review the qualifications for the franchise of our hearers.
Very well.
May I ask all of you to please rise. You ladies, of course, may remain comfortably seated. In order to vote, as well as to hold public office in this year of 1784, you must be a free white male. If you are Indian, Negro, or mulatto, please be seated. You must be 21 years of age or older. If not, please be seated. Yes, in this year of 1784, you must needs be Protestant. If you are of any other religion, please be seated.
See there? See, even you, sir, were seated.
Last, we come to the requirements of land ownership, which must be one of the following three. Listen to all three before you determine as to your eligibility. You must own either 50 acres of unimproved land or 25 acres of land improved, defined as having something cultivated upon that property and a dwelling house at least 12 feet square. Or you must own a lot and a townhouse in one of our two incorporated cities, those being Williamsburg and the borough of Norfolk. And furthermore, this land ownership must be free and clear of mortgage. If none of those three apply, please be seated.
And sir, you're still standing in which borough, Norfolk or Williamsburg?
The second qualification had no regard to citizenship of state.
Sir, no, it certainly does. We're talking about the bill for religious freedom and Henry's assessment bill for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
For the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yes,
absolutely.
So
that was a question I did not get to answer.
So you are not from our Commonwealth?
No, I am from a Commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, you've been free to worship as you choose for generations, have you not? Who do we have still standing? One gentleman yonder?
I just don't have a seat.
Are you standing, sir?
I'm from Europe.
It appears that this entire discussion has been for nothing.
Well, Colonel, in my opinion, if you will allow, it has been for something most valid, most important. It has been an opportunity for the people to hear freely our opinions, and thereby make up their own mind. That is the principle of who we are as Americans, and therefore, sir, I could be standing with no one better, a representation more knowledgeable than yourself, sir, because we understand as Americans a difference of opinion ought never be a difference of principle.
Upon that head, sir, we are certainly agreed. We're very pleased to linger a while longer below.